Today we're going to explore what was, really, one of the most remarkable musical and logistical events of the entire 20th century. We're looking at the creation of the 1985 charity single, We Are the World.
Mm.
And you have to understand, this song is so much more than just a pop anthem. It's a time capsule. It details how the world's biggest stars mobilized for a humanitarian cause and the immense pressure that came with it. But first, we really must establish the gravity of the situation that made all of this necessary. The sources we're analyzing chronicle the response to the devastating 1983 to 1985 famine in Ethiopia. This was a crisis so profound that it tragically claimed the lives of an estimated 1 million people.
1 million people.
That scale of suffering is the essential context for this story. Our exploration today is a thorough analysis of the source material from the very beginning, the song's conception, and the near impossible logistics of its recording night, all the way through to its colossal commercial success and, most importantly, its lasting global humanitarian impact.
And what's so fascinating here is that the creation of this American supergroup wasn't an idea that came out of nowhere. It was a direct and very intentional response to a successful British precedent.
Right. Band-Aid.
Exactly. By late 1984, the British collective Band-Aid had already released their charity single, Do They Know It's Christmas? And that record really served as a proof of concept. It showed that you could leverage music celebrity to generate substantial, really significant funds for international aid.
So who in the U.S. saw that and said, we need to do this too?
Well, the initial impulse came from the musician and longtime activist Harry Belafonte. He saw the potential there to channel the star power of U.S. artists toward African famine relief. His aim was to create an organization specifically for this cause, and that organization became United Support of Artists for Africa, or USA for Africa.
USA for Africa.
And while the primary mission was absolutely focused on Ethiopia and the surrounding regions, the sources also clearly indicated dual purpose. A portion of the proceeds was set aside for hunger and homelessness relief right here in the United States.
Okay, so let's unpack that. How do you go from one person's vision, even Harry Belafonte's, to secretly getting 45 musical legends in one room? That seems like an impossible task.
It was a masterful exercise in networking and, delegation. It was organized chaos, but it was managed meticulously.
So who did Belafonte call first?
He first connected with a major entertainment manager, Ken Cragen. Cragen had the skills, and crucially, he had a massive client list.
Right, big connections.
And he enlisted two of his biggest names right away, Lionel Richie and Kenny Rogers. They immediately recognized that to make this work, they needed more than good intentions. They needed seismic star power.
That's where the creative core starts to form.
Yes. They successfully recruited Stevie Wonder, specifically to provide what the sources describe as immediate name value.
But you still need a producer, someone to actually make the record.
And they got the best. Quincy Jones was drafted as co-producer.
And the sources say he was in the middle of a huge project at the time.
A massive one. He took time out from working on the film The Color Purple just for this, which really underscores the urgency everyone felt.
And then Jones makes the critical call.
He calls Michael Jackson, who had just finished a huge tour.
Okay, so once Jackson and Jones are on board, things must have kicked into high gear.
Breakneck speed. And that put intense pressure on the songwriting. The original plan was for Stevie Wonder to be part of that writing team, with Jackson and Richie.
But he was busy too.
His commitment to the Woman in Red soundtrack meant his time was just too constrained. So the primary weight of writing this anthem fell on Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie.
And where do they actually write it?
They worked together at the Jackson family home in Encino, California. Their mission was clear, but, technically very demanding. They had to craft a song that was universally accessible, easy for anyone to sing, and deeply memorable.
An anthem.
An anthem, but without being saccharine. Jackson's sister, LaToya, she offered an insight into the atmosphere. She described these long, quiet, emotional nights spent in Michael's bedroom, just focused on perfecting the melodies and lyrics.
And she said Michael wrote most of it.
She later recounted that Michael contributed the majority of the lyrics during that concentrated effort.
And this is where it gets really interesting because you see Jackson's characteristic creative intensity just take over.
It really does. The sources confirm he worked so fast and was so energized by the idea that he kind of bypassed the collaborative process for a moment.
What do you mean?
He recorded a complete demo with drums, piano, strings, the essential chorus words, without even telling Richie he was doing it.
Wow. So Ritchie had no idea.
None. And he and Quincy Jones were reportedly just shocked by how quickly he managed to lay down the complete, detailed structure of the song.
So that initial burst provided the foundation.
It did, but the joint writing sessions that followed were reportedly very difficult. A lot of intense back and forth. And despite that high-pressure start, the final lyrics and melody were only locked down at the absolute last minute.
How last minute?
Literally the night before the first major recording session, scheduled for January 21st, 1985.
So with the ink barely dry on the sheet music, they have to move straight into recording the instrumental track.
Immediately. The initial tracking began on January 22nd at Kenny Rogers' own studio, Lion's Share Recording Studio in Los Angeles.
And this first session was critical, wasn't it? This track would be the blueprint for every single superstar who came in to sing on it.
Absolutely. Jones knew he needed absolute precision and, a perfect groove. So he hired a rhythm section he trusted implicitly.
And this wasn't just any session group.
No, this was a powerhouse trio. John J.R. Robinson on drums, Louis Johnson on bass, and the pianist Greg Phillinganes.
That's the same trio that played on Michael Jackson's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough.
The very same. Their presence ensured the track would have immediate commercial energy and just technical flawlessness.
So once the backing tracks were perfect, Ritchie and Jackson recorded the vocal guide for the other artists.
Yes, and this wasn't just a throwaway recording. It was the emotional anchor for the whole project. Jones, with his exacting producer's ear, he listened to multiple versions.
And he picked the sixth take.
The sixth take, and his reason is so instructive. He felt the previous attempts had, and this is a quote, too much thought in them.
He wanted it to sound natural.
Immediate, and full of heartfelt sincerity. He hoped that would encourage the other superstars to deliver equally genuine performances.
That attention to detail is remarkable.
It is. After settling on the instrumental and the guide vocal, Jones had cassette duplicates made.
Cassettes, right?
And these were sent out to all the invited performers. The sources highlight that he included a very stringent note imploring them not to share or copy the tape.
He had to keep it secret.
He had to. He was emphasizing the importance of secrecy and maintaining the dignity of their contribution to fight world famine.
Which brings us to the famous and highly secretive night of January 28, 1985, at A&M Recording Studios in Hollywood. I mean, this session wasn't just a recording date, it was a feat of high-stakes logistical engineering.
Security and secrecy were absolutely paramount. Ken Cragen knew that if the location leaked, the paparazzi and media frenzy would have scared away the celebrity participants instantly.
So security was tight.
Incredibly tight. The sources stressed that the precise location was held close until the very last hour. And to manage the inevitable clashes of celebrity egos, a very powerful psychological cue was put in place.
The sign.
The legendary sign taped to the door reading, "Check your ego at the door."
And that wasn't just a clever line.
No, it was a mandatory contract for the evening. You have to remember, they were bringing together more than 45 of America's biggest musical acts.
With reports suggesting over 50 more had to be turned away.
And many of them were coming directly from the American Music Awards ceremony, which was held just hours earlier that same night.
So that sign was essential.
It was. It established the atmosphere of collaborative humility right from the start.
The roster is still just staggering to look at. You had rock legends like Bruce Springsteen, pop giants like Cyndi Lauper,
The enduring artistry of Paul Simon, Tina Turner, Stevie Wonder,
and the sheer vocal authority of Ray Charles and Billy Joel, alongside the pop monarchy of Michael Jackson and Diana Ross.
even members of the Jackson family, including LaToya, Marlon, and Tito, were there in the chorus.
But the sources also provide tremendous insight by focusing on who was not there. The reasons behind the absences reveal so much about celebrity and image control.
The most famous absentee, of course, was Prince.
Right. Quincy Jones had a specific part planned for him.
He had envisioned a duet for Prince and Michael Jackson, which would have been, an iconic moment in pop history, but Prince declined to attend.
Do we know why? The reasons seem to vary.
They do. One source suggested he was reluctant to record with so many other acts. Another cited a public insult directed at him by the Band-Aid organizer Bob Geldof. Whatever the reason, his absence was significant.
But he did try to contribute something, didn't he?
The sources detail that even during the session, Lionel Richie contacted Prince, who then offered to contribute a guitar solo recorded separately.
And Ritchie said no.
He declined the offer. He felt it undermined the whole point of the session, the unity of everyone being in the room together.
Prince did end up on the album, though.
He did. He contributed an exclusive track for The Tears in Your Eyes to the USA for Africa album, which showed his commitment to the cause, just not to the collective recording process.
And there were others who missed out and regretted it.
Deeply. The sources note that the actor and comedian Eddie Murphy declined because he was busy in the studio recording his own single, Party, all the time.
He must have kicked himself.
Murphy later admitted that once he grasped the magnitude of We Are the World, he felt profound regret. He said he felt like an idiot.
And then there's the John Denver story, which is actually quite sad.
It is. Denver actively asked to participate, but the manager, Ken Cragen, reluctantly turned him down.
Why?
Cragen revealed that some members of the organizing team felt Denver's, his country folk image would detract from the song's intended identity as a pop rock anthem.
And that really hurt him.
Denver recounted in his autobiography that the rejection broke my heart. It just illustrates the highly calculated decisions that were being made about the song's aesthetic and its commercial credibility.
So once everyone who was going to be there was in the room, the logistics settled, the atmosphere shifted.
Dramatically. At about 10:30 p.m., before any singing began, Bob Geldof, who was there as a chorus participant, gave an unvarnished account of the crisis.
And this was crucial, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To ground everyone in the reality of why they were there.
It was the emotional anchor. Geldof described the horrific reality on the ground in Ethiopia, walking through corrugated iron huts, seeing victims suffering from devastating diseases like meningitis, malaria, typhoid.
It's awful.
He recounted seeing dead bodies lying alongside the living and the resource shortages. He gave this harrowing example. One camp had only 15 bags of flour to feed 27,500 people.
Wow.
His testimony just forced this room of superstars to fully grasp the weight of the human suffering they were there to alleviate.
And that powerful moment set the stage for the next source of tension, the actual lyrics.
Yes. Initially, there was a major concern over the guide lyric Michael Jackson had recorded. There's a chance we're taking our own lives.
I can see why that would be a problem.
Jackson and Jones were instantly worried it carried negative connotations, potentially referencing suicide, which would be entirely inappropriate for a song about hope.
So they changed it.
Lionel Richie quickly suggested a fix, changing the second part to We're saving our own lives.
And then Jones tweaked the first part.
He did. He changed chance to choice. And he was very intentional about this. He explained, one thing we don't want to do, especially with this group, is look like we're patting ourselves on the back.
So choice felt more active, less self-congratulatory.
Exactly. His full quote was, so it's really, there's a choice we're making. It focused the lyric on the proactive decision to help, not the risk they were taking by being there.
But the real creative flashpoint, the big argument, was about the ad-libs.
It was. During one section, Stevie Wonder suggested substituting a line in Swahili for a simple vocal sound they were working on, the sound Shalom Shalinge.
And that didn't go over well with everyone.
No. This suggestion ignited a heated debate. The sources detail that the country music legend Waylon Jennings found this addition particularly distracting, and this specific argument prompted him to temporarily walk out of the studio.
He left.
He did. The creative team realized the complexity of inserting a language unfamiliar to most of the singers and listeners. So ultimately, they removed both the Swahili suggestion and the original Shalom Shalinge sound.
And the compromise they reached was the final lyric.
One world, our children, which allowed the emotional emphasis to remain on unity and the future. It smoothed over that temporary friction very effectively.
And there was another emotional moment later that night, wasn't there?
A vital one. In the early morning hours, Stevie Wonder arranged for 2 Ethiopian women who were visiting the United States to be brought into the studio.
What an incredible idea.
Their presence was a moment of profound human connection. They personally thanked the assembled singers on behalf of their country and the famine victims.
That must have had a huge impact.
The sources note that this unscripted moment was such a raw reminder of the song's purpose that it brought several of the superstars to tears, just reinforcing their collective commitment.
So despite all the challenges, they got it done.
They did. All the solo parts were successfully recorded that night. The session finally concluded at 8 a.m. the following morning.
An all-nighter with the biggest names in music.
Considering the egos, the technical complexity, and just the sheer volume of talent involved, it remains one of the most successful and demanding one-off recording sessions ever.
Now let's look at how the song itself was structured. Quincy Jones's arrangement was key to managing all that talent.
It was meticulous. The arrangement was designed to give every vocalist a distinct moment without being swallowed by the sheer number of stars.
And musically, it builds and builds.
It does. The composition starts in E major, but the sources highlight a classic pop technique Jones used for emotional impact. At the 4-minute mark, there's a powerful modulation.
A key change.
It shifts up to F major, and it stays there until the end. That simple key change is what gives the final choruses that heightened energy, that sense of continuous buildup.
Let's lay out some of those specific vocal assignments because the sequence was so crucial to the song's pacing.
The opening was all about establishing that core emotion. Lionel Richie starts, then Stevie Wonder, Paul Simon, Kenny Rogers, James Ingram, Tina Turner, and then Billy Joel.
That covers the first verse and pre-chorus, and then the first big chorus hits.
And it's led by the two titans who wrote the song, Michael Jackson and Diana Ross.
Then the second half brings in a different energy.
Dionne Warwick, Willie Nelson, and Al Jarreau take the second verse. Then you get the high-powered rock and pop voices for the second chorus.
That's Springsteen.
Bruce Springsteen, Kenny Loggins, Steve Perry, and Daryl Hall. Then the critical bridge section was sung by Jackson, Huey Lewis, Cyndi Lauper, and Kim Carnes.
And the main chorus was full of huge names, too.
Absolutely. Even if they didn't have a solo, you had people like Dan Aykroyd, Harry Belafonte, Bette Midler, the Pointer Sisters, and Smokey Robinson. It was just a who's who of 1980s music, all assembled in a very calculated order.
So the recording was finished, but the real test came with the release. The commercial firepower of We Are the World was immediate and really unprecedented when it was released on March 7th, 1985.
Unprecedented is the only word for it. Columbia Records reported an initial shipment of 800,000 copies.
And they sold out in how long?
3 days. Just gone. It instantly became the fastest-selling U.S. pop single in history.
There is some amazing specific data points on that.
There are. At the famous Tower Records in West Hollywood, they sold 1,000 copies in just 2 days. A store worker remarked that typically a #1 single might sell 100 to 125 copies in an entire week.
So the demand was just exponential.
Completely off the charts. And the pace on the Billboard charts was just as rapid. It hit #1 on the Hot 100 in only 4 weeks.
That's half the usual time for a single to peak.
Easily. It debuted at number 21, leaped to 5, then 2, and then right to the top spot. Even with intense competition from Phil Collins and Madonna, its climb was just relentless.
It was also a huge career moment for a lot of these artists.
A landmark moment. For legends like Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Willie Nelson, and Al Jarreau, this was their only #1 Hot 100 single.
And Dan Aykroyd.
And of course, for actor-comedian Dan Aykroyd, who was in the chorus.
By the end of the year, it was the biggest thing in music.
The best-selling single of 1985. It was certified multi-platinum, eventually reaching quadruple platinum status. Global sales of physical copies are estimated at 20 million, which places it firmly among the top 10 best-selling singles of all time.
So you have this perfect execution, this staggering commercial success, all for an indisputably noble cause. But what does this all mean critically? The source material often shows a polarized reaction when something gets this big.
It certainly does, and it illustrates that constant tension between pure artistic expression and, commercialized philanthropy. The criticism was pointed, and it focused primarily on the potential hypocrisy of the message.
Greil Marcus was particularly sharp in his critique.
Exceptionally sharp. The American journalist asserted that the song sounded, regrettably, like a Pepsi jingle.
A Pepsi jingle? Why?
He specifically targeted that lyric change we discussed. There's a choice we're making. He argued that this phrasing was inseparable from Pepsi's massive advertising slogan at the time, the choice of a new generation.
So he felt it was a commercial tie-in, even if unintentional.
He suggested the result was that Pepsi was getting its commercial catchphrase, some for free, by dozens of global superstars, potentially trivializing the humanitarian message.
That is a serious critique. But the other side of that argument is the sheer scale of the good it did. Doesn't that outweigh the criticism?
Well, that's the core debate the sources present. Professor Reby Garofalo had similar concerns. He focused on the line, "We're saving our own lives."
And he didn't like it.
He called it a distasteful element of self-indulgence. He argued that the artists were effectively proclaiming their own salvation by singing about a crisis they'd never face. He suggested the charity was more about the moral redemption of the affluent performers than the survival of the victims.
And the rock community was dismissive as well.
Yes, music critic Dave Marsh noted that. Their critique was largely political. They felt the song was overly sentimental and, crucially, it lacked what they called a critique of the political policies that created the famine. They saw it as an easy pop solution that ignored the systemic issues.
But the defense of the song was just as strong.
Absolutely. Stephen Holden, writing for the New York Times, gave a compelling counterpoint. He directly addressed that perceived self-indulgence.
What did he say about the saving our own lives line?
He argued that that line actually assumed an extra emotional dimension when sung by people with superstar mystiques. He suggested the power was in these larger-than-life figures humbling themselves to acknowledge the gravity of the situation.
He called it an artistic triumph.
An artistic triumph that transcends its official nature. He gave immense credit to Quincy Jones's production, highlighting how Jones artfully interwoven the vocals. The production didn't try to homogenize the different voices. It used their distinct qualities to emphasize their individuality, reinforcing that many diverse voices were needed to form one world.
Beyond the critical reviews, the promotion was a machine designed to generate as much money as possible.
Every single avenue was used. It wasn't just the single. There was a feature-length music video documenting the recording, a hugely successful VHS cassette called We Are the World, the video event,
which became the 9th best-selling video of 1985.
And a massive array of merchandise, books, posters, shirts, all of it generating revenue for the fund.
The media strategy was also very tightly controlled.
Very. Life magazine was the only media outlet allowed inside A&M Studios that night. Their cover story in April 1985 gave the public its first detailed look at the recording process, making the secrecy itself a key part of the marketing.
And then came the simulcast.
Perhaps the most unifying promotional event of all. On April 5th, 1985, Good Friday, over 8,000 radio stations across the globe played the song at the exact same time, at 3:50 p.m. GMT.
And the sources report these incredible scenes of people singing along everywhere.
Yes, like hundreds of people singing spontaneously on the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York.
Fun.
It was this moment of genuine, manufactured global unity.
So the chart performance is one thing, but the real measure of success is the humanitarian aid it provided. Let's connect this to what the money actually achieved for the victims of the famine.
The financial commitment was immediate and immense. Within just 4 months of the single's release, USA for Africa had raised close to $10.8 million.
Which in today's money is?
Roughly $31 million. And the total funds raised by the organization over the long term have exceeded $80 million.
That's nearly $229 million today.
An incredible amount.
And what's particularly insightful is Ken Cragen's strategy. He didn't spend it all at once.
Right.
Why the restraint?
Cragen understood that large-scale humanitarian crises require sustained effort. He noted that experts predicted it would take 10 to 20 years just to make a noticeable difference in Africa's deep-rooted issues.
He said spending it all at once would be like a Band-Aid.
Like putting a Band-Aid over a serious wound. His philosophy led to a structured, long-term investment strategy aimed at sustainable change.
So how was the money allocated?
90% of the funds were pledged to African relief. Both short-term needs like emergency food and medical supplies, and long-term initiatives like birth control programs and food production projects. The remaining 10% was dedicated to domestic hunger and homelessness programs in the U.S.
And those African projects show that long-term vision. They launched over 70 recovery and development projects across 7 African nations.
Exactly. This moves the discussion beyond simple charity to actual development aid. These projects weren't about temporary relief. They were about fighting the root causes of famine.
So things like agricultural training.
Yes, teaching new irrigation techniques and crop rotation to make communities more resilient to drought. Other efforts focused on clean water management, drilling wells. There were even manufacturing initiatives and reforestation programs to combat desertification. It was about providing a lasting infrastructure benefit.
And we have a specific, very poignant anecdote that illustrates the direct human impact. The story of Michael Bread.
This came to light in 2009. An Ethiopian beneficiary of the aid, Elias Kifel Mariam Bayan, recounted the story. He explained that the wheat flour distributed to victims was a higher quality than the local cereal.
And the bread they made from it was special.
So memorable that the local people named it Michael Bread after Michael Jackson. Bayan emphasized the lasting power of that assistance, saying, "When you have been through such hard times, you never forget events like this." The memory of the aid lasted a lifetime.
The momentum from this also spurred a major follow-up project, this time focused on the U.S. Hands Across America.
Yes, that was in May 1986. An incredibly ambitious idea to form a human chain of millions of people stretching across the entire continental United States to raise awareness for hunger and homelessness here.
And We Are the World was played during the event.
Naturally. But the sources reveal a surprising conflict tied to this. Michael Jackson, as co-owner of the publishing rights, strongly advocated for We Are the World to be the official theme song.
But the board outvoted him.
They did. They chose instead to commission a new and ultimately much less successful song, also titled Hands Across America. This had major repercussions.
Jackson resigned from the board.
He did. Frustrated by the decision, he resigned from the board of directors of USA for Africa shortly after. It just highlights that even in these massive charitable endeavors, creative and financial control can create real internal friction.
Looking back, the validation for the single came swiftly. At the 1986 Grammy Awards, it just dominated.
A clean sweep. It won Record of the Year, Song of the Year for Jackson and Richie, Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group, and Best Music Video, and its importance has lasted. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2021.
Beyond the awards, historians recognize its immense political significance.
Yes, the sources credit it with generating an international focus on Africa that was simply unprecedented. It fundamentally changed the model for how musicians could function as a collective political and social force.
And it kept resurfacing at these huge cultural moments. It closed the 1985 Live Aid concert.
With over 100 musicians performing it, though Michael Jackson himself was absent from that performance.
And it was at Bill Clinton's inauguration.
In January 1993, yes, a rendition with President-elect Clinton, his wife Hillary, and daughter Chelsea on stage, singing along with Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, and Kenny Rogers.
The song also served as a memorial after Michael Jackson's death in 2009.
The televised memorial service concluded with a group performance of the song, led by Lionel Richie and the Jackson family.
And that sparked renewed interest.
It did. The song re-entered the U.S. charts, debuting at number 50 on Billboard's Hot Digital Songs chart, proving its lasting resonance.
And its endurance was tested again when another global tragedy struck in 2010, the devastating Haiti earthquake.
A crisis that, sadly, confirmed over 230,000 civilian deaths. And we must express our sympathy for the victims of that disaster and acknowledge the efforts to respond.
A new version of the song was conceived very quickly.
We Are the World 25 for Haiti. It was recorded just 3 weeks after the quake on February 1st, 2010. And significantly, they chose the very same studio as the 1985 original.
With a new group of artists.
Over 75 contemporary musicians. But they made several notable changes, including revised lyrics and adding a rap segment specifically addressing Haiti.
And they used archival material of Michael Jackson?
Yes, weaving his original 1985 vocal into the new track. His younger sister, Janet Jackson, recorded a new part, creating a duet with his archival vocal.
But the 2010 version faced a lot of criticism that the original didn't.
Significant pushback, yes. Much of it focused on the vocal performances. One critic had a particularly memorable, if unflattering, line describing Wyclef Jean's performance near the end.
What did they say?
That it sounded not unlike a cross between a fire siren and the sound of Wyclef giving himself a hernia. It just highlights how difficult it is to recapture the unique magic of that original session.
And there were other versions too, right?
Yes, a non-celebrity YouTube edition and a Spanish-language version, Somos el Mundo, produced by Emilio and Gloria Estefan.
So when you summarize the cultural impact, it really established a new paradigm.
It did. The sources say it subverted how music and meaning were produced. It proved that musicians from diverse racial and stylistic backgrounds could collaborate productively toward a unified goal. The British philosopher Jason Barker even called the anthem the birth of postmodern tragedy and claimed it marks the beginning of the so-called disaster appeal.
Suggesting it formalized the large-scale celebrity humanitarian response.
As a major cultural force, yes. And the story's power endures. It was recently chronicled in the 2024 film The Greatest Night in Pop, with new interviews from Richie, Springsteen, and Lauper, cementing its place as a pivotal cultural event.
This extensive analysis has laid bare the immense scale of what transpired in January 1985. We have charted the process from a single idea driven by Harry Belafonte through a highly secretive, high-pressure, single-night recording session orchestrated by the creative genius of Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, and Quincy Jones. The result was a globally unifying musical movement that generated immense and sustained capital for crisis relief.
The source material presents us with a profound tension that really demands reflection. You see this conflict between the enormous tangible good the song did, millions raised, successful long-term aid projects, the literal memory of Michael Bread helping the hungry survive, versus the commercialized and perhaps self-congratulatory nature that critics like Marcus and Garofalo perceived. This raises an important question for all of us. How does society truly evaluate large-scale humanitarian efforts? Is it by the perceived purity of their intent, or is it by the measurable, life-changing success of their outcome? This is something worth reflecting upon long after the music fades.
Thank you for joining us for this comprehensive exploration of the source material. Thanks for listening.